what's the status of the stuff with the white cloaks on Reddit?
So the White Cloaks on Reddit got soft banned. The page
Okay.
is still there, but all the moderators have been removed, and only posts that have been approved by a moderator can be posted. So, well,
Commissar. Yeah.
that didn't even have the decency to kill us. Left their corpse hanging in the wind as a warning to others.
That's what it is. They put your body they impaled it on a pole as a warning to others. Are you seeing that at all, or have you heard any rumors of what's going on Reddit for the Lord of the Rings Reddits? Because I heard some anecdotal evidence a few months ago the same thing is happening.
So the one thing that I will say about the Lord of the Rings fandom in general is that the Lord of the Rings fandom does not fuck around. the Amazon people, and you see it constantly. They have probably put 30. I am disgusted by the Tolkien fandom for their racist bad-mouthing of the Rings of Power needs to stop because it's problematic posts. And like in the last 2 days. And without fail, the fandom has massacred them.
Good.
So I actually remember this very well. I was in second grade, and I was whining to my dad that the stuff that we were getting in school, stuff like Magic Treehouse, Captain Underpants, it was boring. It just wasn't. It wasn't challenging. And I remember the gleam in his eye and the smile on his face as we walked downstairs to where the big boy adult bookshelf was, where the chapter books were. And he pulled this blue and green book off the shelf and he handed it to me. And it was The Hobbit. And I finished that book in 3 days, which, when you're 7 is, an achievement. And I remember the first night, my mom catching me reading it with a flashlight under the covers and having to take it away from me and not giving it back to me until she got back from work that day, because she knew I was going to blow off paying attention in class to read it. And that book really, for me, sort of, it fostered a lifelong passion for reading in the fantasy genre. I couldn't be more thankful for that book. The big thing for me about Tolkien and Middle Earth, and it's in so many aspects of it. It's the events of the books, it's the events of Tolkien's life, and it's the events of my own life. But it's about family. It's about sort of the passing of generations, and it's about a universal appeal. When you think of the books, so much of it is about familial legacy. Aragorn is the heir of Isildur. Thorin is a descendant of Durin. Even Boromir and Faramir struggle sort of under the weight of what it means to be sons of the Steward. So that the familial aspect is huge, sort of in the book itself. Then when you look at Tolkien's life, his family was involved, in the production of these things. Christopher drew the maps that he put into the books, and he was a lifelong curator and caretaker of his father's books up until sort of just recently, when he's now been too old to be able to keep it up anymore, which is sort of what we're seeing now with Rings of Power. Personally, one of the most precious things that I still have from my dad, who passed a couple years ago, is I have pieces of paper that he was passing notes with back and forth with one of his friends, and he wrote them in Elvish, so that if his teacher found them or caught them passing notes, that she wouldn't be able to read it. So it obviously was hugely important to him as well. And so that sort of the passing on of legacy, I think, is hugely important in the universe, and then also sort of what it means to the Tolkien fandom. And then I guess and it ties into this, is the quality and the universal appeal of the books. Really struck me. These were written by a guy born in the 19th century in England, in sort of 30 years after their publication in Oxford. A kid in sort of the poorest section of Dallas, Texas, was reading it, and not just reading it, but was loving it to such an extent that he learned the fictional language that was associated with it. And I find that to be remarkable. For me, this is a fairly easy one, and it's always been Boromir. Tolkien's books are incredible. They've inspired 3 generations, maybe 4 if you include his peers at Oxford, of fantasy genre authors. But in this particular instance, I think Peter Jackson actually did it better. Aragorn is the guy that you sort of aspire to be. He's not perfect, but he's unattainably perfect, for lack of a better term. Boromir is more the guy that you are. We're all flawed. We all carry burdens outside of our control. We all face temptations, and we all make mistakes. And I think the important thing is to carry good intentions in your heart, and then when you do make a mistake, you do everything that you can to make up for that. And I think Boromir, more than anything else, is the one who really emphasizes that sort of mindset. He was the one who made the mistake that led to sort of the breaking of the Fellowship, and he was the one who willingly gave his own life to protect the Merry and Pippin, who probably weren't necessarily vitally important to the mission, but who he knew that he had wronged in what he had done. So I think that is really an important message, and one that I try and carry with me. My recollection of the pre-Jackson Lord of the Rings adaptations is very limited. I distinctly remember watching the animated version of The Hobbit when I was a kid, but it doesn't stick out to me sort of in the same way that the Jackson trilogy did. So while I'm well aware that the Jackson trilogy made alterations to the books, Aragorn was turned into more of an action hero. Gimli was more of a lighthearted goofball, for lack of a better term. But in sort of the aspects that mattered to, I think, both the plot and the audience, as far as appreciating the work as a whole, the Jackson trilogy really sort of met the very high bar that I had for the high esteem that I held this, the book trilogy plus The Hobbit. So in that sense, the Jackson trilogy, to me at least, is the sort of the gold standard for all adaptations moving forward. And I cannot imagine the ambition that it took to say, I'm going to try and recreate Tolkien's work on film. I mean, the ambition and the confidence needed to say that, borders on arrogance. My initial reaction is essentially fury. When you think about the themes of Tolkien, I think maybe the biggest one was his love for nature and his distaste for industrialization. And when I think about Amazon, I sort of think of the industrialization, the corporatization, the sort of everything unnatural and constraining about modern society. The fact that that corporation is adapting this work is irony on levels I don't think we've seen before. And I talked previously about, you know, the ambition that it would require to try and take on the books to do what Jackson did, how it bordered on arrogance. Trying to add on to the legacy of both Tolkien and Jackson's work is not just exceedingly arrogant, it is blasphemous, especially when taken in combination with everything that we know they're going to do with it based on what we've seen from the trailers and what we've seen from, you know, Amazon's previous attempt at fantasy work. You know, well, I guess the final that I'm going to say today, because I only have a limited amount of time, you know, one other reason that I find this adaptation to be so distasteful is the lying that Amazon continues to do with this. You know, Tolkien was always a massive proponent of truth, and you know, watching the showrunners of this show and the actors of this show continually get up on stage and continually answer questions with blatantly, you know, with blatant lies. You know, it borders on insult. Actually, no, it doesn't border on insulting. It is insulting. So that aspect of it it really boils my blood as well. And it's one more thing that just makes this so awful to watch.
As ever, this is Salty Texas Sea. I am Corey DB. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you've seen and heard, please hit that thumbs up button. If you haven't subscribed, I'd love to have you on board. That way you know, and we have things like live streams, which we are going to be doing every Tuesday evening. Take care. I hope you're having a great 2022.